A hearty good morning to all of you. It is with immense pleasure that we welcome today's session speaker, our very own Vallabh Bhai. For us at FLAME, he has been a constant source of inspiration and guidance. He has been a founding governing body member of FLAME right from its inception and has been an integral part in shaping the university's destiny. We are fortunate to have Vallabh Bhai at the helm. He is well known for his multiple roles, a thought leader, a reputed businessman, and investment banker. He is the chairman and co-founder of the Inam Group. He has also served the economy and capital markets of India for over 3 decades with great distinction, and then moved over to the social and spiritual fields. A man with multiple accolades to his name, Vallabhji has a degree in law and is also a chartered accountant. Known as a visionary, thinker, promoter of spiritual and cultural tradition of India, and an expert on modern fields such as development economics, behavioral science, and communication, he has anchored a popular TV show focused on reviving volunteerism and patriotism in the country called Kaun Hai Bharat Bhagya Vidhata. As a sequel, he founded Desh Apnaye Sahyog Foundation, focused on instilling a sense of active citizenship among school and college students. Desh Apnaye's vision is to make each one of you an actizen, meaning an alert, informed, and active citizen to usher in democracy 2.0, which alone can give the citizens their due. He's an ardent Vipassana meditator and was the former chairman of the Global Vipassana Foundation. He has also co-founded Satya Vigyan Foundation to promote truth and seeing reality as it is, as the foundational practice for success in both spiritual and day-to-day worlds. The foundation's show, Truth Talks, has and is spreading the power of truth through interviews with various luminaries. He is also the co-sponsor and co-founder of Indian School of Public Policy, Delhi. He co-created the impact-making and much admired documentary, History of Yoga, tracing its continuous practice over 6,000 years in India. He is currently serving on some of the policy making and advisory committees of the Government of India. He is a trustee of the Bharatiya Jain Sangathan, one of the most successful NGOs of the country. He is a trustee of the Bombay Stock Exchange and has served on various committees of the Stock Exchange, SEBI, and other bodies. He serves on the board of directors of many reputed companies. We warmly welcome you, sir, and I would hand over the proceedings to you.
Good morning and namaskar. Thank you, Professor Jasleen, and thank you, Tejas Patni, for all the help without which this presentation would not have been possible. Great to meet you, all my friends at FLAME. I feel so sorry that we can't see you face to face, and how much we look forward to not only welcoming the incoming batch, but our students every time we come to the campus. And I really look forward to interacting with you because it's a favorite topic of mine. It's hard for people to believe that how every day morning I get up with new nerves, nervous about one thing or the other, about feeling. but I just got used to failing again and again and not giving up. So it's a great topic to have. And thanks for the terrific replies that I got. Absolutely terrific. And therefore I put them under the caption, wisdom at its best. Guys, you got it. So this nervousness and this failure is a part of my life. Just a few words about this course, financial literacy, and why this topic of failures. This, of course, is integral to life. But on financial literacy, to teach this course at age 17, 18, sometimes creates doubts. So I said there are three very important things why we are starting early. That's not easy. While your replies show what kind of wisdom is amongst the class, I got about 100 replies, and I'm sure that if others didn't reply, not that this wisdom is not at its work in most of the cases. Second, there is an easy path to become rich and successful using financial literacy. And let me give you a story from my life. In 2010, we decided to merge our company NM Securities with Axis Bank. A few days after that, I got a call from one of my uncles. He was my childhood mentor. So he congratulated me and said, but Vallabh, I can't understand something. So please explain. He said, what you did was you merged your company with Axis Bank. I said, yes. And so all your business and people are transferred. He said, yes. But the name NM remains with you. I said, yes. And all your employees' salary, standing cost, everything is shifted to the bank. I said, that's right. And if the bank does well, you'll continue to profit from it. I said, that's also right. He said, then what have you given them? You've eaten the cake and you have it too. I was very embarrassed. I said, that's not what I meant. I think we gave them something great, very great goodwill, collecting all, collection of that people and wisdom. But maybe he was right that, we created something and we created a transaction which was perceived in this manner. Another story about financial literacy. This relates to Li Lu. I don't know if you heard about it. Li Lu is one of the most respected investors. Person of China origin. He was at Columbia in 1993, lost his parents at young age, was brilliant, but rather distracted. One day, his friend tells him that Mr. Warren Buffett is coming to the college and he's going to give a lecture. He didn't have anything much better to do, so he ended up in that class and it changed his life. Mr. Buffett explained that how it was possible to be very rich by just being a good investor. And FLAME, all the founders, all the directors are constantly recognizing that investment is not only a career skill, but a life skill. Riches is a small part of it. The whole wisdom in it is amazing. And your answers, what to say about them? I think they're simply terrific. And for once I thought that, why do we have to teach this class at all? As a matter of fact, you cannot teach anybody anything. And I'm very conscious that while I put up this slide that it is futile to suggest that you learn from failures because it's the very plan of nature. But also another thing, it's a saying in Hindi, समझदार को इशारा काफी है. What it means is that the ishara is very, very useful. Somebody just pointing a finger at something useful, something important, something you may be missing, but that's about it. All learning will happen within only. We're teaching this only because we know that the financial world is difficult. But let me tell you guys, how many of you remember at what age you learn to talk or walk, and what sort of difficulties you had in achieving both. Just think about it. You can see babies grow up in your house around you. If you achieve that, you can achieve anything, literally. I want to spend today's talk talking about three things. First part maybe is simple, intuitive, but probably the most important. And which is, what is the nature's plan as to failure and success? How does nature really look at it? Second, the challenge of finance. What makes it so difficult? And third, what wisdom you can use, what processes you can use to be extremely wise about finance and life. So beginning with nature's plan, if you look at this picture, this baby would have fallen innumerable times, struggled, frustrated, cried, hurt, but eventually made it. That's how all we do. What is at the heart of this try, fail, and learn methodology of nature? Firstly, we do not recognize how unique we are, not only as a species, but each member of the species. We don't know our body, we don't know how our mind functions. And therefore, nature wants this learning to happen at that universe, at unit level, at unique level. And only by failing, by falling, will you be able to understand this. More importantly, success is public, everybody will clap, but failure is private. We all talk about heroes, as we say, success is 1,000 suitors, failure is none. Failure is private. And in that privacy, it hurts, right? I think if you read the replies, and those who attempted to give replies, you went through your own traumas, frustrations, depression, and whatnot. Failure, it hurts. It cuts very deep. And therefore, it builds deep references in your mind, in your body, in your emotional entity, what we call the Pavlovian mind. It's only when things reach there, then can one say, oh, you learned something. So there are two patterns in life, my friends. One is this, what we call, if you can go back to the baby slide to see what drama is happening. Who is telling the child to get up, to crawl? This is nature at work. Constantly, nature is pushing us, it's giving us the urge to move, to go to a higher level. And so you see two kinds of people when you are in the instinctive age, and that instinctive age stops for a lot of people quite young. But for most people, we go on. So we want to play, we want to make friends, we want to do other things. That's all coming from our instinct. So this urge to take a new challenge, and then you fail, you succeed, and you go to the new urges. At some point of time, those who stop acting, they feel stifled inside. That's how the world is full of mediocre people, because they have stopped listening to the urge within. This is a very profound statement. The world is full of mediocre people. Mediocre not because they don't have the potential, because they stopped trying. The second pattern that you will see in the world is that you fail, and when you fail, you can do one of the two things. That you blame either yourself, your destiny, or others, and sulk. Inevitably, you will fail again and again. And then this whole pattern of blaming self or others and sulking, it becomes a life pattern. The second option is that you analyze what happened. You do not look at the label failure, but you look at what actually happened. And then you move. That inevitably will allow you to move. And then you succeed, you grow, you fail again, you succeed. So all my friends who have given me the replies and who have written about their own stories, I congratulate you because you overcame something which is such a tragedy in our society, this word failure, one of the most unfortunate terms. Professor, you can go back to that slide. That two words, one is failure and second is impossible. So unfortunate. If you can see nature's plan, there is no failure, there is no success. There is only a movement. There is an urge to move, to move, to move. So much so that when you have achieved whatever is easy, people want to do crazy things like take a jump from the sky or do deep diving, deep sea diving, and a variety of other things. We want that challenge. It is inherent in us. That's nature's plan. For those who cannot understand this, they get stuck at failure. They're really missing out on life. Go to the next slide, please. So how does one remain a child? If you look at nature's construction of a child, it has a lot of baby fat. Its bones are soft. As we grow up, physically, of course, we cannot retain the baby fat or can't help the bones becoming harder because we want to do new things. But mentally, if you're smart, you can remain the same. Be open-minded, have fluidity of thought, move from one thing to the other, be extremely curious, etc. And one person that I have seen for now close to 40 years do that consistently, and no wonder he is who he is Nimish Bhai, our president and founder. On any given day, on any subject, he is happy to learn from anyone. There are stories that some junior accountant of a company is aghast that Mr. Nimisha wants to sit with him and learn. And this is how you remain a child. You have no ego. You won't get hurt. You can fall again and again. Please move. What is the plan about success? This is the plan about failure. So also about success. These images, this image is very, I don't have to explain. But if you look at their life, what's happening is they just develop the ability to learn and to act and become humbler and humbler. Their ambition is not a particular goal. Their ambition is only to be good every day, to learn every day, to be good every day, to execute that learning. There's a very interesting story about a third partner in the early days of Berkshire, Rick Guerin. Rick Guerin somehow thought that these two people were rather conservative. And since they had so much smartness, they had all figured it, they figured out the markets, the business, etc. Why shouldn't they take greater risk? Rick Guerin did. He did well for a while and then crashed. So the ambitious fail only when they stop learning and they stop being humble. There's a complete plan of nature if you want to see it. Next, please. On this failure part, readiness to fail is not the same thing as desire to fail. There's a big difference. So I think those who have written to me, they have shared this, that how they are more ready, the fear of failure is gone out of them. And that's the big thing. That strength, I cannot overemphasize, the readiness to fail, because from time to time, you will have to change your career. You have to eventually reach the life purpose. And let me share some of my stories. I never wanted to be a commerce student. I ended up being in commerce due to some constraints, etc. So I completed my BCom. I didn't want to do a CA, but I didn't know what else to do. So I did my CA. And I got stuck until I met somebody who understood samajhdar ko ishara kafi hai. And he said, well, if you don't like what you're doing, why don't you change? I didn't have the courage and the clarity which I'm hoping to pass on and impart to you. This man gave it to me, that you don't have to remain stuck. And don't worry how brilliant you are as a chartered accountant or a lawyer. Just check it all. That ability to see that life does not come to an end with a failure, was a great, great moment in my life. and I haven't looked back. From being a practicing accountant to an investment banker to someone interested in behavioral science and so on. So this ability to reset yourself, Corona is forcing a lot of people to reset. People who are unfortunately having deaths in their families, suddenly life has changed completely. Some of our students have written about these experiences. This ability to reset comes only with the ability to fail. Next, please. And why this is important is because you can't learn the same thing from success, right? If you look at the two recent test series, one in Australia and against England, India lost first test against all probabilities, against all projections. And how we learned from that failure, we created history. Look at Corona. What has happened to India? We started with a lot of doubts, but then we thought we did rather well. The moment we took our eye off the ball, we thought we were successful. It was great, a humanitarian feeling that, let's share our vaccine with the world. But today we are short of vaccine. I have no regret about it. I think that empathetic action was great. But I think letting our guard down so we don't learn from success, that's why failures are important. Please. Now, if you got these insights, certain things will happen. Firstly, you will not be touchy. Society is very touchy about being a failure. You don't care about the society. The moment you move out of that, you will be able to analyze your situation. So I don't want to go down the whole list, but just take a few of them. You start recognizing your limitations. And the funny thing is that when you look at your limitations in an objective manner, instead of somebody else pointing out, you want to do something about. Number of students have talked about how they failed in some subject and how they were determined to do better, go from 50 on 100 marks or failure in maths to 100 on maths. There's a number of stories that have come out. Now, if you can analyze all this, all yourself, and just push those limitations very happily, those students who did that turnaround, they did not feel the sweat of having to practice every day. And that's how you become magical. The second thing is compounding, which is not always easy to understand. But let me give you some illustrations from your life. We are so used to going to our favorite social media page. We go to a restaurant, we want to sit at the table where our favorite waiter is there. All our relationships are compounding. I think this compounding part, if you grasp it, first you see it in your relationships, in your habits, then you see that how by learning cleverly, learning nicely, it all compounds one subject over other subject, three subjects, and how they come together, giving you a completely different perspective from someone who is still focused on one thing, and you gradually master it. The compounding in finance is not different. Once you understand that how by sticking to something nice, something comfortable, something that is aligned with the uniqueness, things work out so beautifully. A sentence or two about this point about negativity. Suppose you had all the strengths in the world, but somewhere you had the bad habit of bragging about it and making enemies. What happens to your strength? Suppose you had, Duryodhana is a classic example. He was as strong as Bhimsen, but his envy just brought him down. And so also other things. So there's a formula I want to give, that your strength is not your strength. Your strength is your strength divided by the negatives that you have, or the doubts that you have about yourself. Just do the math and see what happens. Even if you have one doubt, it is equal to what your strengths are. But if you have zero doubts and zero negatives, the denominator is still there. And if that is zero, you are infinite. If you have humility and ability with no doubts, your ability is infinite. And of course, last point is that you need a practice plan. You need a plan and you need to practice that plan so that all these habits become better and better. Let's quickly jump to the financial part. That while all these, next slide, please. That these answers and insights that we talked about and I got are terrific. They're great life skills and maybe you don't need anything. But there is some chasm to span, to cross the financial world. And we'll talk a little about it. This is one of the most amazing books that you will find in your library, and maybe not today for most of you. Some of you may be able to absorb it. This is a stupendous effort put in by a Swedish businessman, Peter Bevelin, who turned from being a businessman to an investor. And he went through thousands of lines and statements that Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett had given over a long period of time and put them all together in very easy, very accessible topics and in a conversational manner. What the book is, it just identifies what are the traps, the beliefs, the myths that we carry about ourselves and how the world will exploit it. And I want to share two of my stories. And the first is about how when you start becoming successful, you don't recognize that you are in a junior class. If you're not feeling from time to time, something is wrong. And that's what happened to me. A few years ago, I thought I could make any business successful. And I had this passion of backing people. So there came along somebody and gave me a business plan. I didn't pay attention. The person left me after some time. I'm stuck with a terrible asset, badly located, bad business in a bad place, and a lot of difficulties. The second story is a more painful story. The second story was that I talked about this nervousness that we all have, and I'm not ashamed of it. And there was some aspect of my personality which was looking for some support. There came a person who gave that support, but he was also attached to someone not nice. And I got by and by through him affiliated. It came very, very close to getting so deeply involved that it would have hurt my reputation. So the essential nature of being careful, etc., probably helped me, but I did go this far. This book identifies all such traps that we have within our minds and how the world will exploit. So I think it's a great book whenever you can. Next, please. And these lessons are common with the world of finance too. Next, please. I would want you to spend 1 minute reading this. The world of finance. What makes it so zany, so crazy, so difficult, so exciting? Obviously, money is very powerful, but it's not well understood. And therefore, as soon as you come into a career, the greed and fear about money become very acute. And I put two stories here. One is, some of you may have read about it, this gentleman, Bill Hwang, who lost $20 billion in 2 days or 10 days or something like that. Now, it's not about Bill Hwang. But if you look at the story of Bill Hwang, what is going on in the world becomes clear. This man was trained by Julian Robertson, a legend on the Wall Street. And they had to pay close to $500 million to settle something that was not right. This is the history of the person. Then he was banned by Hong Kong Stock Exchange for 4 years from accessing the exchange. It's about the banks who are continuing to finance it. Two big banks, Nomura and CSFB, lost billions. The question arises that individuals may have some kink, may have some twist in them, and therefore they poor fellows, I would say, I'm calling Bill Hwang a poor fellow, because obviously you've done so much damage to yourself. But what about these banks and institutions who are supposed to be understanding money, understanding credit? They talk so much about track record of a poor person. This man had a track record of having paid huge penalties, blah, blah. And yet They gave him so much money. CSFB lost $4.5 billion. So also the other story of this famous company, Long-Term Capital Management, put together by three very, very famous PhDs. And one of them is Black and Scholes model. I don't know if you read about him. So this is Dr. Scholes was a part of this triumvirate. And so the amount involved in LTCM was probably not large. And Mr. Warren Buffett, at the behest of the US government, bailed them out. But the deals were worth billions and billions running through the financial system of the world, which means that you cannot be educated enough. The greed and fear will get you anytime. I gave you two of my stories, and these are some very famous stories that how difficult it is to not to succumb to greed and fear. Move, please. What makes it so? Finance is like the story of civilization. If you just think back, it was probably a barter world. And in a barter world, our economy was limited to what I could produce in exchange. But then we created money, then we created credit, and then we created stock exchange, and we created derivatives and so on. So that little economy of, a goat versus, pound of wheat or whatever, has now billions of goats and trillions of goats and trillions of pounds of wheat. To give it some concrete aspect or concrete dimension, I just put some numbers there. The world GDP is estimated at $90 trillion. So this is the real economy. But the assets under management of the famous companies is something like $80 trillion. Now, $90 trillion is made up of so many different transactions, and which are not assets. The world market cap is 110 trillion. These numbers are just estimates, so they move all the time. Banking assets are estimated at $130 trillion, just the banking assets. The global debt is estimated at $281 trillion, estimate sometime back. Outstanding derivative trade is $457 trillion. Again, it's a moving number. So if you look at, and fortunes are made and lost, institutions created, jobs held, promotions obtained, and whatnot, in all of this. So the real world is very small, but the financial world is almost infinite. This makes things very difficult. We talk about stock market, transactions, volumes every day. But one estimate said that 5% of trading days produced 100% of the gains over the last 80, 90 years. If you miss those 5 trading days, now you really don't know what is right. There are 85% of the fund managers underperform the indices as per one estimate. This number also keeps, because sometimes they have a good run, sometimes they have a bad run. This is crazy. So fear and greed and the complexity make financial literacy difficult. And look at its features. Oh, so exciting. I'm sure all of you love this. Numbers and math, more numbers and more math. What is interest rate? What is compounding? What is inflation? What is actuarial? Now, this actuarial is a funny thing. Actuarial means the assumption that you make about the life estimate, etc., etc. Now, the number of assumptions that are underlying the balance sheet that you read, the profit and loss account you read, about the value of your assets, is all assumptions. And to go wrong is so easy, but it's all about that. And they, because of all these volumes, they achieve a life which they don't really have. And then what about legalities? And what about government? And incentives, oh boy, incentives. There are no greater incentive plans than in the financial world. You heard about all the bonuses that Wall Street traders make. After 2008 crisis, the government in US stopped. They prevented the banks from taking positions in commodities and things like that. They were playing havoc because they were incentivizing the best kids coming out of college to got onto the trading floor and take billions of the world. So the incentivization, so whether it is an IPO, there was a story that when Chinese companies were going public in the US, English was a problem. So one prospectus would get picked up by investment bank. Tejas and Jasleen, I think we aren't doing well on time for various reasons. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you would copy paste those prospectuses, and even the company name was not changed in certain sections of the prospectus. Why? Chinese paid the highest fees to investment bankers. Against 4 or 5%, they were ready to pay 7, 8% or even more. With that incentivization, Chinese companies were able to collect billions of dollars from around the world. So this is about incentive and the government's role. Please move. And how many of you want things to be easy, to get good returns? We just have to switch on the TV and see the commercials. It's so easy. Oh, come on. The financial world will always make it sound, and this is famous movie, The Wolf of Wall Street, Leonardo DiCaprio. I think that's him, right? Yeah, it is. So these are the traps. Because it's complex, but we want it. And why do we want it? Next slide, please. The moment you start earning, you have all these desires and maybe needs, which are very natural. And the world will see to it that they fan it, they promote it, they multiply these desires. But the trouble is that there are limited resources. Move, please. So the options are: be complacent, be absolutely risk averse, do fixed deposits and things like that, or buy what gets promoted, or ask around on tips, or be a Rakesh Jhunjhunwala and do it all yourself. Prove you're spectacular and brilliant. Some of our students have Rakesh as a role model, and that's great. But for bulk of the people, you have other options. You have the option to be wise. So everything that we've discussed so far in the first section was about becoming wise. Learn gradually, act when needed, most important. The whole theory about failure is that only when you act, the real wisdom dawns on you. There are 3 wisdoms. All are important. What you hear, what you think, and what you achieve or what you absorb by action. So you have to learn to act, and that ability comes as you act more, fail more, learn more, etc. Look at it, the easy part that we talked about. If you invest in the right company, whether it is Berkshire, Kotak, Infosys, and a few others, those stocks have multiplied 100, 200, 500, 1,000 times. So there's an easy path, the wiser path. Of course, it requires some effort, not too much. Next slide, please. It requires the effort, the boring effort of taking baby steps. You can't be docile, baby intelligent steps. Making mistakes, never a big one. But then it's kaput, it's finale, gone. So those who speculate too much, unfortunately, are not in the category of making mistakes. They are gambling, and sometimes gambling their life and fortune. Next, please. What is this path? I think the first section and this section, it talks about giving you all the virtues. Being diligent. I'm not going to deal with each one of them. I'm just going to take a few because we are running out of time, or we have run out of time. Being diligent. We don't want to verify. If a friend asks for a loan, you will think 5 times. If it's one of your relatives, you'll think about 10 times. But how easily people give money to schemers. And Bernie Madoff is a great example. The man did a swindle of $64.5 billion. Amongst the most famous were his customers. So I won't go into a Ponzi scheme. I'm sure that through the class you've learned about Ponzi schemes. He ran the most successful, the biggest Ponzi scheme ever. So the point is not about brains like Bernie Benoff, but the smart guys who think, who have taken classes like this and who are studied in finance and all, giving their money to such people. There is this point about review. Unless we review our life, there's no reset. People like Buffett, Munger, Nimisha, they are constantly reviewing their portfolio, their life, their activity. How to do better? Where is the mistake? So it's easy to, read all the newspapers, what I call radar, to research some of it because so much it is available. Execution is becoming easier and easier online. We have this commercial on, I watch the, IPL sometime, and then I see this kid come out of a gym class and buy stock. So execution may also be easy. But what about review? So review is most important. Then this question of, the government is supposed to look after its stock exchange, directors, auditors. My friends, if all of them were doing their job as expected, not that they don't, but not as expected in every case, why would you have problems at all? The Satyam software is a classic story. The year before they went down, I won't like to mention them, but they got an International Corporate Governance Award. They had won Corporate Excellence Awards, several of them from local publications and other institutions. So they are not enough an indicator. You cannot give a whole break to your common sense. Good guys and smart guys. The last point. There is nothing luckier in the world than to find good guys to stick to them. So much so that even if you have to pay to stick to them and hang out with them, please do. We have this classic story of Mr. Warren Buffett that he came to know about Benjamin Graham at Columbia. And he said, wow, what a smart guy. And Benjamin Graham was a great value person, frugal, etc. So when he received this application from Warren, he said, look, we can't pay you. Warren was delighted. He says, forget payment. I would have paid you also. I don't want any salary. I just want to work with smart people. This compounding of good people is the greatest compounding one can have. I say it is next only to nirvana, because in nirvana, you don't want anything. I can't emphasize this more, that if you remain in this world and you're not on the nirvana path, you will always want something. And to want that something, to fulfill that want, you need resources. And to understand the nature of resources and dealings, this company of good people, good friends, good advisors, good lawyers, good auditors, good companies that you invest in, even if they produce a smaller return, they'll keep you safe, because good guys put safety first. Next, please. Liabilities. It's a big issue. All these big companies that created NPAs, they were rich with assets, but they were richer or rather poorer with liabilities. And be watchful. We had this extraordinary commercial, right, of Rahul Dravid by a company called Cred. And what is Cred wanting to do? Cred says it is ridiculous by its own admission, but they want your data. And why do they want it? Because they want to lend to you. When they say, this guy is spending here, spending there, and his payments are regular, they want your payment data and spending data, and they want to lend to you. So you'll make a mistake once in a while, and they'll charge you 30% in it. So liabilities and debt are certain. Be watchful. The whole world is growing. As I said, on a $90 trillion of real GDP, the world debt is $281 trillion. That brings me to the last, couple of other points. I will skip the negative interest rate part. These stories that you will hear, my friend did this, my friend's uncle did this, or my uncle's friend did that. And, in Corona, he did this, or in finance, he did this, or whatever field. Please be extremely watchful. Outcomes don't tell you, don't mean that the process was right. As we said, success can hide a lot of weaknesses. Be extremely careful. And maybe I'll just talk about the last point is gold and Bitcoins. We need to rethink, like Mr. Buffett. He was not a technology investor, but then he said, oh, there's so much happening. We were wrong about not understanding technology companies. I won't get into detail because it's not an investment class. So also this old asset class of gold, it may become relevant again. So also this very, very new class of asset called Bitcoins or cryptocurrencies, it may become relevant. So it's only through failures that you become non-touchy, you become objective, you develop a practice that you are able to take advantage of all these things. And of course, start early. There's this lovely story at the end of it. Please read. With that, friends, I particularly want to compliment those people who shared their experiences. 1/3 of them put their names. I'm delighted at the quality of our class. And I land by saying, Samajhdar ko ishara kafi hai. The ishara is about nature's plan. Nature wants you to move, not to sulk when you fail, but analyze and move on. Great success awaits you. Great happiness awaits all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We would now request the students to queue up their questions. Once your questions are queued up, we would take them one by one, and you could unmute yourself and read out the question to sir itself. So we'll just wait for a minute or so. There's already one question come in by Siddharth Ved.
Let's wait for 1 minute.
Yes, sir.
Shall we start?
Sir. So we'll go ahead with Siddharth Ved's question.
All right. Siddharth, I'm allowing you to talk. You can just ask your question directly to sir.
Hello, can you hear
Go
me?
ahead, Siddharth. Yes, Siddharth, please go ahead.
First of all, thank you very much for your thoughts. They were of great value. Mr. Nemish Bhai Shah is someone who we are all very familiar to. And the kind of value learnings a benchmark in ethical work in the stock market. The last time I was able to clearly hear Nemish sir was on the listing of the Mani sir's Avenue supermarkets. But there must have been instances where both of you would have felt that the solution to the challenge faced is very difficult or next to impossible to find. If possible, it would be great if you could share any such instance that and how you were able to overcome that challenge. And also, it would be an honor if there is even an inch of possibility to get Mr. Nemish Bhai Shah to speak to us. I mean, even though we are all connected technologically, but I feel this barrier created is too less than the amount of experience and instances that you people have gained and we can possess and understand from it.
So I think there would have been many, many instances when we faced difficulties. Once I remember we borrowed some money because I think there was some smart trade to be made. And the funds that we were expecting did not come in time. My late brother and co-founder of NM, he was also there that time. It was the early days of NM. And because we were doing well, I made great connection with corporates. I just got some money. And then when our funds did come out, three of us were shivering because we are not used to checks not being paid in time, etc. And we said what to do. We said, we just be truthful. Let's go to the lender. And so I called him and I said, look, three of us want to come. So when we entered his cabin, he says, don't say a word. People like you say that we are coming in threesome. I know what has happened. Don't you worry. It'll come in a few days. My money can't be better hence. So this, we were shivering, but by following the principle that, look, whatever happened, we are not gods, and so on. One very difficult transaction I went through was Morgan Stanley. For various reasons, we created this innovation of what we call first come, first serve. And I never imagined it'll go crazy. And it did go crazy, and there were illegal trades and crores and crores. And I think one of the most complicated cases in the country that time, and cases were filed against the issue in so many courts, from consumer court in Assam to endless. And it was a grave challenge for me. And because there was nothing wrong inherently, the disclosure was clear in the prospectus, in the newspaper announcement, but someone had started this rumor that, oh, something like this can happen, and that, you'll profit on day of listing. People had just gone crazy. And how luck or, good stars help you, that the Chief Justice of India, when that case came up for hearing, by just mention it was not regular case, last 10 minutes of the day, they say anything else to be, taken up. And this case was taken up. We say, this is our difficulty. He said, okay, this given. Then he asked us, do you want anything more? I understand what mischief is going on. So we were lucky that in a lot of our challenges, we got saved. But there were cases, we just wrote off the money. We said, let's not even chase it. We made a mistake. Let's not even go after this person. So we wrote off a lot of money instead of, crying over it and chasing that money, filing suits. We never got into litigation, never got into dispute with anybody. If we thought that, something can be settled for money, it is the cheapest because it saves your time, emotion, everything. So that's how we dealt with a lot of difficulties.
Siddharth, hopefully your query has been answered sufficiently.
Yes, ma'am. But Mr. Nemisha, like my second part was, if you
you think that Corona is here forever? Don't think like that, friends. Campus will open up. We'll all meet. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Siddharth, would you want to go with your second question also that you've put up further?
Okay, ma'am. So my second question is that during your chairmanship at the SEBI, how did you view the board before, during, and after your tenure? And what caused these changes in the way you viewed SEBI differently in all these three time phrases?
Firstly, I was never the chairman of SEBI. I worked on several of their committees and so on. But I was chairman of SEBI is a government bureaucrat.
Sorry, sir, my bad.
So that's not relevant. But I think we've been evolving wonderfully. Capital markets in India are rated as amongst the best administered. We are the highest volume exchanges, National Stock Exchange and derivatives and so on. So, I think we are doing well.
Thank you.
Siddharth, we'll come back to you later on again for the third part. Or so would you want to take up his third part as well?
I don't know. I leave it to you. You're the moderator.
Okay, Siddharth, you can ask your third part and then we'll move on to Aditya Veer Singh.
Okay, and I can assure you that this is my last question. If it's possible, can you please share a few of your most favorite memories with Mr. Rakesh Jhunjhunwala? Because I'm very sure that many of us here look up to him as someone who is a very great investor. And what, according to you, has a few of the most important factors that made him what he is today?
Well, Rakesh is much research, much talk, and if there's anything missing, he himself is ready to talk. So I don't know how much we can say. But earliest memories of working with Rakesh was a plant visit we did together way back probably in 91 or so, and I was absolutely wonderstruck by his brilliance, by his logic, by his passion, and ready to bet his shirt on ideas that he believed in. And his childlike innocence, he is like a child. So he is a bundle of great, qualities. So his humility that, oh, Radhakishan Damani shaped my life so much, shaped my trading so much. He'll make admissions like that. If he likes something, he will express it. If he doesn't like something, he will express it. So that lightness of his heart and the brilliance of his mind make him an extraordinary person.
Great. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's move on to the next question by Aditya Veer Singh. Aditya, can you come unmute yourself and ask your question?
So, good morning, sir, and good morning, ma'am. So, my question is basically, I want to ask, sir, that what were your biggest mistakes when you started investing, and what were your biggest learnings from them, which we can inculcate?
So I mentioned about, one private investment which I made without any diligence, and I'm really struggling with it. Then I invested in a company which bore my name, Vallabh Glass. And that was in the excitement of 92 frenzy, when stocks were just multiplying, and somebody just mentioned it to me, someone I trusted. And well, the stock just collapsed. More recently, I invested in a company, but I could not exit in time. Even after I told the management that, look, you're not deserving management, or this business is not what you think, you haven't even understood your own business. Despite that finding, I did not move out of the stock, and the stock has gone down, probably to 30% of what it was at that point of time. So these mistakes happen all the time. So if you read some of the quotes that Mr. Buffett made about Dexter Oil and Philip Conoco and so on, where he said that I lost, 400 million, 500 million, so many billions, but then he promises you, I'll make more mistakes. So I think to think that we are one stable entity is not correct. We are evolving at different stages, and we will make new mistakes. As long as our diligence grows, I think that's the important part. So I'm not yet done, done with making mistakes. Maybe the biggest mistake of my life lies ahead. Who knows? I think important thing is not the mistakes we made. Important thing is that, how you remained intact. You did not get bogged down by, having failed, having lost. That is the important thing. Because nature has no failure, no success. As Edison said that, when his bulb was finally ready, so some people knew, the journalist knew that how many times he had failed. He said, Mr. Edison, you would have failed 1,000 times. He said, no, there were 1,000 steps to my success. So there is failure after success, success after failure. So they keep happening. The important thing is to look at it objectively and have all these qualities grow in you. You will never be perfect, grow in you by and by.
Aditya, hopefully sir has answered your query.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Yeah, so we'll go with Ashutosh Vanaparthi next. Ashutosh, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hello, sir.
Hello.
So I just have two questions for you. First is, I just want to know your biggest failures in life and how you overcame them. The second question is, what led you to institutional building and founding up, institutions like FLAME and Institute of Public Policy and things like that. So I just wanted to know your thoughts on this.
So, like a failure, so to speak, that changed my life was my BCom examination. I was a good school student. I became an average college student, and I'd become a very poor student by my final year. But my reputation was good. My self-perception was that I'm a good student because I knew I was capable. And I knew I would get a third class. I didn't eventually get a third class. University gave me 2 marks and I passed honors. But that moved me so badly, so much. I thought of even committing suicide. All kinds of thoughts were coming to my mind. And that's when I recognized that failing was not bad. But this deluding yourself that you're good, and this desire that the world should look at me for what I am not, it pained me very, very much. But that changed my life. And I said, what is. Let me just work on that principle. And that brought about the biggest transformation in my life. Thanks to Acharya Vinoba Bhave's book, Gita Pravachana Lectures on Gita, where I don't know, directly or indirectly, I just recognize the principle of truth, that be truthful to yourself. And I think my life has not looked back. I went through a wrong profession or what was not right for me, and then I was able to make changes. And the rest has just been, as I said, nature gives you all these urges. Listen to them, act on them in a diligent manner. And that's how, it may appear on a CV like institution building and so on, but these things just happen. They happen so easily, so casually, so lightly. And you always feel more humble and grateful instead of saying, oh, I really created this, that, etc. These CVs are a terrible thing. So these things happen to you, my friend, as you develop this, this privacy of failures, privacy of understanding your own emotion, your uniqueness, your connection to the universe. You look at all these, that, oh, I was here for this purpose, and you keep doing these things and feel more and more humble as you go along.
Thank you, sir.
Then thank you. The next question will be from Aman Kulkarni. Can you please unmute yourself?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
So my question is that knowing that chartered accountancy is one of the most difficult exams to crack, how difficult was it for you to put back all those 5 years of intense study and hard work to start afresh?
It was freedom for me, my friend. Firstly, because of this transformation that I had as a student, chartered accountancy was a cakewalk. I mean, it may sound very presumptuous and very, brash to say that, but I never thought anybody could fail me. That was my kind of confidence, because I said, I never told myself that I know something which I didn't. So if I know my stuff, how can anybody fail? So that besides, it was not too much for me to, let go. But this freedom, when the nature is telling you that, you have to do something else and you're not able to do that, it is so stifling. So I was lucky that I was looking to get out of that feeling of being stifled, that I met this great mentor, who gave me this Samajhdar Ko Ishara, and I took it. So that liberation is a lot more valuable. To ask Gandhiji, what happened to your law degree and practice in South Africa and all, it didn't matter to them at all. Wearing that loincloth gave him greater happiness. So I'm not wearing a loincloth exactly, but if I go to Vipassana for 30 days, giving all this up market and trading and all, it means nothing. When you align with nature, it's just phenomenal. Everything else that you're talking about as being valuable just ceases to be valuable, my friend. I wish you go through that experience.
Thank you so much.
Okay. So the next question is going to be by Chaitanya Mehta. Chaitanya Mehta, can you unmute yourself and proceed with your question?
Hello, Vallabh sir. Thank you for today's session. So this is just a request, but may you please take up a session on Vipassana meditation?
Sure, it's up to the organizers. Always happy to do so.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So we move on to Yagyavak. Yagya, can you unmute yourself?
Hello, sir. Can you tell me more about your spiritual journey?
Sorry, what journey?
Spiritual journey.
Sure. There is this principle discovered by our sages, Yat Pinde Tad Brahmande. That means what's in you is in the universe. That the microcosm is the macrocosm. That's the essential of spirituality path or spiritual path. And that's what happened with me. That how dealing with my failure, my weaknesses, my own transformation that, look, you have to be truthful, etc., etc., the universe around me started to change. That how all the subjects start making sense to you, how people start relating to you differently. And then you say, we always think that there is somebody called brilliant and people are talking to him. No, it is brilliance and not the brilliant person. It is the brilliance per se that brings about magic. It is the virtues in us that bring about magic. It is not about the virtuous. The virtuous person loses the virtue, he loses all value. That's what we see. The heroes fall and the zeros rise. So I recognize this. Oh, there is an order, that these qualities represent nature's alignments. These bad qualities represent faults in nature. There will be earthquakes there, you will fall in them. That's about it. And then we say, okay, how do you sustain these qualities? Then you go to the next level of, what we call your yam niyam or shila, that how this being moral, being truly moral, not only for pretense, but in your heart, non-violent in your heart, truthful in your heart, etc., adds so much power to all those practices as seen from outside. And that's how you go deeper within. And then you see, oh, this is all united, this is all one. I'll just share one shloka with you, which comes from Ishavasya Upanishad, which says, I won't go into the Sanskrit Ishavasya Vadam Sarvam, whatever. Say that the whole world, everything that you see and perceive is controlled by an order. Learn to respect that order. This order wants you to succeed, wants you to consume, to live well, but not to own it. Don't try and own anything. Don't steal from it. You will be really punished. So I think all these laws of morality are nothing but, limit yourself. When you speak the truth, when you violate the truth, somebody loses very badly. The whole trust system gets disturbed. Obviously, it'll come to haunt you. So also, whether it is the rule of celibacy, whether it is, stealing. If I don't like that one mango from my fruit orchard should be stolen, I feel very bad about it. I feel bad that a bird comes and eats a grain from my farm. How can I steal from anybody else? So, you just see the nature's law in it and not just some prescription of this religion or this book, etc. And then you find great alignment. Life becomes extremely simple. So I think going within, this just failing is so important because it creates that privacy, that intensity, that hurt. And again, you do that. And again, all these things become clearer to you that, oh, this is the right method, and right method gives you the right results. And then there are deeper and deeper methods or deeper and deeper realities about that right method, which you discover. Therefore, whether you're working or whether you are at Vipassana, they all start becoming the same thing.
Yagya, hopefully sir has answered your query.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks.
I must also say, Yagya, that after all, as I said, out of 3 wisdoms, listening, understanding, and acting, some of this will become clear when you get onto the path. Some is like Samajdar ko ishara. So this is only that part.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on to Akshat Mundra. Akshat Mundra, if you can unmute yourself and ask your query.
Sure. Sir, what are your views when it comes to trading in stock markets versus investing in it? And what, according to you, is more reliable?
Clearly, investing is more reliable. The history shows that. There is the story of Jesse Livermore, who was probably the most famous trader of all time. And when the stock market crashed in 1929, he was the richest man in the world, probably. But then, he committed suicide eventually. So trading is very, very high risk. I don't understand much of it, but I'm not for it at all. Well, I cannot say, that somebody who wants to do it in a measured manner, if that is possible, because success will breed greater desire. So I think for us, there's a distinction between buying on credit and trading. When you want to trade in and out and take advantage of market fluctuations, that is classic trading. So we are not for it at all. Investing is so much more comfortable, so much more rational, so much less risky. There is just no comparison. And in one of the slides, I put this, that today speculating is being called trading. It is plain speculation where you depend upon fluctuations to profit. There is no substance to it. Betting is being called, oh, social, it's a social game, meet new people online. It's plain betting, plain speculating, gambling. So be careful.
Akshat, please proceed to ask your follow-on question.
And sir, while analyzing a company, what's the one thing apart from the numbers you look into?
If you get a chance, read this person, Peter Dedden, I think one of the wisest persons. So he said, when you study a company, it is not just the finances that you study, but what goes into making those finances. So he said, go to the extent, and Lee Lu does that. They go to the extent of finding out, which club the CEO visits and what is his reputation there. What is he like in real life? Because what is he like in real life can one day come to office. So if he's not used to, living a kosher life privately, it will come to his office, right? So you have this famous case of person who was almost certainly going to become the France president, and then he was caught in a sexist scandal. So I think once you study the financials, you start thinking that, what are the people and what are their, thoughts and beliefs which are enabling these results to come. Say, for example, if we find that against the trend, some company is growing its sales, so you must worry about it, that, what are they doing? Are they overbilling? Are they incentivizing? Are they selling cheap? Are they selling on credit? And therefore, money may become difficult to, collect when things go wrong, and so on. So when we look for consistency and commonsensical answers to as many questions as possible, you go beyond the financials, number one. Number two, what is the nature of the business? So that's the second thing, that what is the nature of the businessman and what is the nature of the business? These two things are probably bigger umbrella questions than just the financials and the ratios. So when you look at, say, for example, Avenue Supermarkets, people who know Radhakishan Damani, that what sort of a person is he, how wise he is, the financials become less important, because businesses are, volatile, things will change. When you look at a history of a company like Tata Steel, more than 120 years, almost 120 years, 1907 or 1908, they went public, and they were founded earlier. So these people have survived everything. There's so many hidden assets that are not on the balance sheet. So studying the softer aspect, the people aspect, is the more important part of studying a company.
Akshat, hopefully sir has answered your query.
Yes, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next question comes from Gagan Kumar. Gagan Kumar, can you unmute yourself? And I request you to club both your questions together and ask. Gagan Kumar, can you unmute yourself? Okay. Okay, Gagan Kumar is having.
Ma'am, got it.
Okay, okay.
I was able to.
Sure, no.
Hello, sir. First of all, it was a very informative session. Thank you for it. What are your views on the crypto markets and the futures? And as per you, what is the right age for investing in stocks, mutual funds, or crypto markets?
So in one of the slides, I said start early. There's this very interesting story of Jack Simmons, that since 1988, his fund has been compounding at 66% until 1928. I don't know the latest numbers. 66% per annum, against 22% of Mr. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway. But Mr. Warren Buffett is so much richer because he started at the age 10, 40 years before Simmons did. So there's great value to starting early. That's question one. And what is the second question?
What is your views on the crypto markets and their futures?
So there is something very compelling about cryptocurrencies, but there's something very difficult about cryptocurrencies, that all the central banks are, kind of not comfortable with cryptocurrencies. So some people think that, well, cryptocurrencies make a lot of sense. As I said, there is nothing substantive left in the financial world because the governments are bankrupt and each government is racing to become with each other to become more bankrupt. And people don't trust the fiat currency, that means just by law currency. And people are looking for something which will have value. And that's why conservative countries like Switzerland, their currencies are extremely, they're very highly valued today. So from that point of view, cryptocurrency makes sense. Challenges, which cryptocurrency? What will the central banks do about it? By law, you can outlaw everything. Central banks can create their own cryptocurrencies. And that's what is likely to happen, that each country will make its own cryptocurrency so that people have an alternative currency, just as you have a government currency note and a bond. The bond may have more stable value or some other instrument which are better guaranteed and so on. So these are the challenges, but it's a class of assets that you must study. Whether you want to invest a small amount in it is an open question, but I do respect the creation of cryptocurrency.
Ma'am, if I may, just one more question.
Sure, please.
Sir, personally, this is a Vipassana related question. Personally, I've done only a 3-day course. What is the maximum day course you've done, sir?
I've done a 30-day course.
Good to know, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gagan. Can we have Rishabh next? And can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, respected sir and ma'am. So I would like to first of all thank you for your great insights on life and how to go about learning from our failures. So my question to you is, you mentioned in one of your answers about aligning with nature. So I wanted, if we could know, what are some baby steps we could take in that direction?
I think being grateful is a great place to start. If you just look around, so how many people don't have what you have, a full set of body. And if you can write 30 things today for which you feel grateful, you will have started your spiritual journey. Because you'll start recognizing that there has to be a plan for you to have what you have and others not have that. Once you recognize that, then you say that, look, do I know my body? Do you know how your tongue works? You have no idea about your whole body function. So you're just using it. And most of the time we're not using our body, we are wanting to abuse it. So this intelligence starts waking in you. And then you start seeing, oh, there is this great order. And what is that order trying to tell me? Why is it that when you feel angry, you feel miserable?
Right.
Isn't it?
Right.
Or when you are when you want something, you can't sleep. Your body is not happy with it. Nature is telling you, you're crazy.
Right.
But because there will be poetry about it, songs about it, movies about it, because if you are excited, you're a market man, you're a consumer, you're a valued customer. People can take advantage of that situation. When you are angry, people can take advantage of that situation.
Right.
And therefore, there are a lot of these weaknesses, which are, what I call the traps that we create for ourselves and the traps that the people lay to catch such people. That starts becoming evident. So this self-observation and gratitude, these two are a great place to start. And then, of course, looking at people whose life you find are fulfilled, are peaceful, are useful, they also inspire you to understand that, how this alignment works.
Right, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. Thank you. We'll now move on to Ria Khandare. Ria, can you unmute yourself and ask your question? And we'll be taking one more last question, sir, by Mannat, because we have overshot our time. Ria, you may please proceed.
Okay, so you mentioned that you did a BCom, but you weren't too interested doing it. What is some realistic advice for one to be good at something they don't enjoy? And secondly, if you could pick your specialization freely then or even today, what would you choose and why?
See, if I understood your first question correctly, that if you are having to do something that you don't like, how to excel at it. Is that what you asked?
Yeah.
So, sometimes due to parental pressure, sometimes the needs of life, that, you have to take up a job and a certain degree may be more useful than the other. You have to go through it. And then you say, because I was excellent, I was a top ranker, chartered accountant, lawyer, etc. I had this comfort that nobody could say, oh, because I failed at it, that I left my profession. Look at it this way. So it may become easier. You may have greater confidence chucking it against and, in the face of forces which are asking you to continue in something. So it helps a lot to excel at whatever you are doing for whatever reason. And I found that very, very useful because I was not only successful academically, I was also successful in my practice. So I had this confidence. And I have, this answer from our Vipassana Acharya Guruji, Goenkaji. So he says, oh, people who don't have money are unhappy. But people who have money are also unhappy. And when I quit everything, I had this satisfaction that that I had made money and see that, oh, you still remain miserable. So I think excelling is a good habit by itself. And then even if something that you think you will give up at some point of time, we'll have this great social comfort, personal comfort that, oh, I did not do it out of, poor performance or because I was a failure at it. So it's a good thing. The second question you asked was?
If you could freely pick a specialization, what would it be and why?
I'm not a specialization person. I'm a generalist. I love to jump into 20 things. And therefore, I'm into some movie making and I'm into technology, I'm into social areas and all. So I think we all have different, feelings about specialization. I don't really have that. So I will probably not be able to answer your question, but genuinely, I see myself as a generalist, as someone who tries to understand this alignment of nature and how we can be good and benefit from it. So I go by what just comes through the front door. I don't chase anything, but I say, okay, whatever nature wants me to do, it will come through the front door. And 90% of my activities are all of that kind. One extra thing I did, I'm in deep loss and I talked about it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your response.
Thank you, sir. We will now be taking the last question by Mannat. Mannat,
and before that, I want to thank Ria because I thought our class ratio was 60-65% girls, but in this class, we did not have even one. So Ria, you saved the day. Thank you.
So there's another girl, so Mannat. So Mannat's question, Mannat, can you unmute yourself and ask?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning to one and all present here. So thank you for that wonderful session. It was very informative. My question to you today is that what is one supposed to do when you realize that you are making the same mistake again and again, but you can't seem to change it?
So, taking help from someone you trust, is one of your teachers or elders, that sincerity and that effort is extremely valuable. Sometimes our analysis is not deep enough. Sometimes our effort is not deep enough. So I'll give you from my student example, student life, that if I would have got probably the top rank at chartered accountancy, I got 5th rank in the country. Because I found that while I could solve the accounting problems intellectually, but when it came to practicing it, I was not very good at it. I didn't have the discipline to practice. So the complexity can be simplified by my mind, but just doing the simple stuff, putting the totals together, transferring one number to the other number, it requires sheer practice. So it may be that one of the two parts, your insight about what needs to be done, or your practice about what you need to do, or the amount of practice you need to make that change, one of them may be missing. And sometimes adding a spiritual bit, and this may sound like mumbo jumbo and whatever, but there's something called punya. And what is punya? When we help others, this feeling of helping others is what pleases nature immensely. And this, one analogy I keep giving is that of a mother. That mother enjoys the highest immunity. Mother, because it brings up a child, nature blesses mother with so many, the mother's body is, filled with so many miracles. And that's how punya works. So while you're trying to overcome your problems, do you have empathy for someone else who's having a problem? Can you help that person? It does wonders in nature. So do some of that too.
Right. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. It was indeed a lovely session, ranging right from business world to spirituality, and you mentioning about the Upanishad, Ishanava Upanishad, and so on. And it's really an honor listening to you. I think the students have been continually saying, let us ask one more question. If you would be kind enough to answer whichever left questions or later on, I'll collate them and send them to you. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.